welcome back to Life Enrichment with Hank Ballinger. Today we want to discuss the long game. Now in real estate, a lot of people would love the idea of maybe get a house or two, maybe just one, and rent that thing out and make a ton of money and sit back on Easy Street the rest of their life. That would be awesome if it worked that way, but it doesn't. So today we want to go over playing the long game, because that's really what real estate is. It is not a get rich quick, get rich fast, easy game. It is just not, okay? So we want to go over some numbers and show you and break it down and show you how you can build wealth, but it will take a while, and it's the building wealth over time, the exponential growth over time that really builds your wealth and that makes you wealthy. Before we get into that, I would like to say we appreciate those who have liked and subscribed to the channel, those who share it with others. Great, we appreciate it. Our goal again is to help others get out of the rat race. We want to help other people set goals, attain those goals. It is awesome when you do that. When you can see somebody that you've helped and you see them making it and getting ahead in life, it's awesome. Trust me, if you can, help us out in that endeavor, share and like, it'd be great. We'd appreciate it. So today, we want to talk about the long game. Now, if you play golf, now everybody doesn't play golf, but for those who do, you know what I mean when I say sometimes the long game is good and the short game is bad, and sometimes vice versa. The short game is good. Now, the long game in golf is the drive. Let's say you get up and you got 200 or 300 yards before you get to the hole or to the green, and you get up and you just got to smack the fire out of that ball, and you got to try to drive it. But you not only got to drive it, but it's got to be straight. If it goes off to the right or left, kind of a bad shot, maybe even harder to hit that second one. But a good long game is great in golf. So you hit the ball hard, long, straight, and you get a good setup for your second shot. Now, the short game in golf, obviously, is your chip and your putts, but it's hard to get the long game and the short game good at the same time. I am not even a mediocre golfer. I am the guy that people ask to go golfing with them if they want to feel good about their game. So I am not a great golfer. But you don't have to be a great golfer to understand this lesson, whether we're talking about the long game, the short game, whatever. But today I want to talk about the long game and show you how real estate can build wealth for you. But again, it is not a get rich quick, get rich easy, get rich fast. It is not. If that's the game you're looking for, probably going to have to look somewhere else. But if you get into real estate, you can build wealth. But I want to give you some tips today as to how you can do that and you can make it happen for you. So let's look at two scenarios. One, you get a piece of property that is a $100,000 property, and one is $1 million piece of property. Now, if today's going rate, if you go to most banks, they're going to say, well, about a 7% interest rate. Some a little less, some a little more, but we're going to kind of strike right there in the middle, 7%. On both loans, the $100,000 loan and the $1 million loan, 7%. And we're going to amortize it on 25 years, both loans. If you do that one, this debt service each month will be $707 to the bank. Now this one, obviously it's 10 times bigger, and if you look, the payment is 10 times bigger. And you're going to notice as we go through these numbers today, most of them are either 10 times larger or 10 times smaller. These are all going to be 10 times smaller than these on the right-hand side of the board. Now, if you look on this one, it's a $100,000 property. Now, your first payment, your interest, you know, if you've ever bought a house, you know that your payments, even though part of the payment is principal and part of it is interest, you will notice that when you get that bill and you see how much interest you're paying, it's definitely front-loaded with interest and back-loaded with principal. Meaning the first few payments, you pay much more interest than you do principal. That's just the way they structure the loan. And I guess it's kind of fair because they're putting up about 80% of the loan. So on this side, $100,000 payment, your payment, your interest each month is going to be $583.33 for the first payment, $123.45 for the principal. Now, every single month, the principal will get a little bigger and the interest will get a little smaller. But on a 25-year loan, which is 300 payments, you have to get to payment 182 before the principal and interest are the same or relatively the same. It doesn't matter if you're talking a $100,000 payment or a $1 million payment. With these terms, it's month 182 on a 25-year amortization. That's a long way. You've almost gone, well, you've gone 15 years and 2 months into a 25-year loan before you got the same amount of principal each month that you do interest. Now, from that time past, the longer you go from month 182, you're going to be paying on the same amount of payment each month. Most of it's going to go towards principal and less is going towards interest. And by the time you get to year 25, obviously you're going to pay it off and you won't have either. So that works pretty good. But again, it's the long game, not the short game. Now, we want to concentrate on this $1 million property. Why do we want to do that? Because everything that this property does, this one will only do 1/10 of it. Now, let's say if you could buy either of these properties, okay? If you could buy either, you've got to realize that this one is going to do 10 times better. Yeah, this one, if you're putting 20% down, you're only going to have to put $20,000 down on this one, but you're going to have to put $200,000 down on this one. But remember, if I said you could do either, you're putting $200,000 down on this, your interest each month is $53.88, and your principal is $1,234. Now, after your first payment, this will be your balance, what you still owe on the property after the first payment. Now, look at this. I want to show you something here. After 5 years of paying, at the end of the 5th year, your payment will be $5,328, or your interest, and your principal will be $1,740. Now, you've got to realize at the end of 5 years, you really haven't gained a lot of balance. You haven't gained a lot of equity in the property, what you have gained in value, because you still owe $911,000. So you look at that and you say, well, I haven't even gained $90,000 worth of value. True, but we're going to show you how that is not right when we get down here, when we look at the value of your property going up. Okay, that's going to be very powerful as you look 25 years into the future. You not only are paying that debt down, but it's also going up in value because you're raising rents. And rental income, the value of the property is tied to the income. So as it goes up 3% each year, the value of the property is going up as you're paying the principal down. So here, after the 10th year, you owe $786,334. So after 10 years now, you have almost $250,000 worth of equity in the property. After the 15th year, you only owe $608,000. And you say, well, in 15 years, I've only paid off $400,000. True. But look at year 20. You pay a lot. Why? Because you reach this halfway point, and from year 15 to year 20, you pay quite a bit down. Now, at the end of 20 years, you only owe $356,000 and some change. But if you look at the value, you have now about $650,000. You see how incrementally this goes up every single month and every single year. So if you will just stay in the game and just make those payments. Now, I know Dave Ramsey and some others say, well, If you say you're not making these payments, you're wrong. Well, I disagree with Dave on this point. Now, I like Dave. I like him on a lot of issues, a lot of points. But on this point, let's say you didn't buy this property. If you hadn't bought this property, nobody's making this payment. But if you do buy this property, the money you get in from the tenants will help you to make this property. So where is the money coming from that's making this? From the tenants. Yeah, it has to go through your hands and then you make the bank payment, but had you not bought the property, you wouldn't be able to. So you're getting that money from the tenants, and so in essence, they're making this payment, they're giving you the money, you make the payment. Now, again, after 20 years, you have $356,000 that you still owe, but you have $650,000 worth of equity. At the end of 25 years, you don't owe a dime on it. And some people say, well, I will have $1 million worth of property after 25 years. No, it gets better than that. Let's go to step 2. Now, I also want to show you one thing here. At the end of 25 years, remember, your tenants are making these payments. At the end of 25 years, here you have $1 million worth of net worth, at least. It's going to be more. Here you would only have 100,000, 10 times less. 10 times less. So if you're willing to just do a little bit more, then you can build a lot more wealth. Because you're willing to do more, you get more. More risk, more reward. Yeah, it's a little more work, but again, if you're willing to do the work, you can reap the rewards. So yeah, seems like a lot of work. It is, a lot of thought process. You have got to play the long game. Nothing easy about it. More thinking than you've ever done. If you don't like numbers, probably real estate is not for you. But if you will learn to get good at these numbers, they can really pay off big dividends, big dividends. Let me show you something else. Now, again, this property, this $100,000 property, is 10 times less than what this one will be. So I want to show you what this $1 million property would do. Let's say if you bought a $1 million property and it went up 3% per year, meaning if you bought it 1 year, the next year it would be worth $1,300,000. It would be worth 3% more. So see, every year it would go up by 3%. Now, that doesn't seem like much, 3%. But every single year, you're going up 3%. And you're raising your rents 3%. Now, let me tell you something else also. This 3% is a very conservative number. Generally, it's 4% or more lately, especially lately by the pandemic, stuff like that. The last 2 or 3 years, it's been way more than 4%, way more. So I don't want to tell you an exact number. It's a little hard to calculate, depending on the person too, how much they've raised rents. But this is a very, very conservative number. So if I tell you in 25 years, you're going to have 3% increase, that's probably not even close to what you will have at the end of 25 years. But let's go over this at 3%. So if the first year it was valued at 1 million, if you raise 3%, the next year it's going to be worth 1,159,000 at 3%. Now, I'm sorry, this is after 5 years. After 10 years, it would be worth 1,343,000 and some change. At the end of 15 years, it would be worth $1.5 million. At the end of 20 years, it would be worth 1,806,000 and some change. At the end of 25 years, it would be worth over $2 million. Do you see why this is the long game? Do you see how that works? It exponentially grows, and just at 3%, in 25 years, you have over doubled your money. You've gone from a $1 million property to a $2,093,000 property. But it gets much better. That is not the end of the game. Even though it's a long game, That's not the end of it. Much better. Now let's say at the end of 5 years, you decided to borrow against this property, and the bank will let you borrow up to 80% of the value of this property. From this property, you'll be able to take that out and buy another property. Okay? That's the way a lot of people do. They get a little equity in it. They go to the bank and say, how much would you give me out of that property to borrow against it to buy another one? That's the way a lot of people build wealth very fast. And I'll show you how that builds wealth fast here in just a bit. Here, if you had this much in 5 years, if that building is worth that much in 5 years, you take away 20% because the bank will only give you an 80% loan to value or LTV loan. So if it's worth this much, take away the 20% that the bank says they won't give you a 100% loan, but they will 80. So you take away the 20. The bank will say, we will loan you up to $927,419 against that building, but you owe this much. So if you take this much, that they will go up to the 80% of this much, you still owe this, they will loan you $15,000. Doesn't sound like much, does it? But that's only after 5 years. Let's do the same thing with 10 years. You would now have a property because it's gone up in value. So it's now worth $1,343,916. Take away your 20%. Now what the bank says they will loan you against that property is $1,075,132. But you still owe this amount. So the bank says just 5 years later, you would only take out $15,000 here, but here it's almost $300,000. Do you see the difference? The longer you stay in this game, the better off you will be. Now you go to year 15. The same thing, you take away 20%, it's worth $1.5 million. They say they will loan you this much, you still owe this much. They say we will loan you $637,651 against that property. Pretty good, huh? Now you go to year 20. The property is now worth $1.8 million. Remember, you only got it at $1 million. It was only $1 million property 20 years ago. Now it's worth 1.8. Now if you take the 20% away, because they only loan 80% LTV, you still owe this much. Well, they'll loan you up to this much. You take away that much. They will loan you at the end of 20 years more than you paid for the property initially. And you still own the property and you're still getting cash flow. Great way to do this. At the end of 25 years, you will have this property paid for, so you won't have a debt service. So if you have a $2,093,777 property, if you go to the bank and say, I want a loan, they will take off the 20% and they will loan you $1.675022 against that property. You only paid $1 million, you're getting over $1.5 million loan against it after 25 years. And that sounds like, wow, that's a great long game. It is, but it gets better. Real estate is the best asset class ever known to man that has ever existed or will ever exist. Let me show you how this gets even better. Every time you borrow this, after the end of 5 years, you could borrow this much. At the end of 10 years, you could borrow this much. 15, 20. Let me tell you, every time you borrow this amount, you don't pay one dime of taxes on any of this that you borrow. Because it's not earned income. You didn't earn it, so you don't pay taxes on it. It is not, you didn't sell anything, so it's not capital gains. So you don't pay one dime of taxes on any of this. So after 20 years, you could borrow more than what you paid for the property initially and buy more property. And if you put $200,000 down on this property, at the end of 20 years, you could do that again 5 times and still have $87,950 in your pocket. And then in 20 years, can you imagine where you're going to be by playing the longer game and do that again in 5 times as much? Do you see why I tell people when they get into real estate, get as much as you can early. The more that it builds each month, the more it builds faster. It's like a snowball. It's the illustration I use all the time. I tell people, when you build a snowball in really good packing snow, you go out and you start that snowball. It starts out small and it doesn't build up very fast, but you notice as you get that snowball big, every time that thing turns one time, it gets bigger faster the bigger it gets. And it doesn't take many turns once it gets that big, 1 or 2 turns, and you can't even push that thing. It weighs a lot. The same with real estate. The longer you stay in that game, the more property you get, the more it's going up in value every month, every year, because you're raising rents, and the more you're paying down on the debt service. But if you will leverage against that property and buy more, and then as soon as you get those 2, some equity in them, borrow from those 2 and buy 2 more. Now borrow from those 4 and buy 4 more. Borrow from those 8 and buy 8 more. You see how it's just going to exacerbate the amount of income you get and the amount of equity that you get. Now, whatever you do here, this is only going to be 1/10 the amount. So yeah, you could do this, and that's fine. I encourage everybody to build wealth, make their life better, set goals and achieve those goals. But here, the more you do, the more you're willing to think, the more you're willing to work, the more you can have. And can you imagine if you started this at 20, this is only one time. If at the age of 40 you said, I'm going to take this and do it 5 more times, and then by the time you're 60, you now have 6 properties and you can borrow from all 6 of them. You could borrow $6 million at 60. You could do a lot with $6 million. So what I'm saying is the long game is real estate. If you want to make a lot of money, get wealthy and just spend that money and just buy nice cars, fancy cars, big house, a lot of fancy clothes. When you're way up here and you're barely getting started, real estate is not the game for you. You're going to go broke. But if you want to play the long game and you want to do this, work it, you can do it and you will become wealthy. You can become Redneck Rich. See you on the next video.